Hello, everyone. Sorry, I had to start the live stream over again because it wasn't working properly. I couldn't access my webcam, so I had to restart it. So that's why I'm kind of running late. I originally uh, scheduled this live stream for 7 p.m. Central Time, but I forgot that it was six that it was that I forgot that it was actually Eastern Time on my computer. So, so that's why I decided to go live now because some people might be confused. So I'm kind of an hour early for that reason. Well, as you know, I did a live stream before um, that didn't really work out because no one came to it. But if you're here, just say something, say anything, so I'll know that you're there. Um, I don't know. For some reason, I had to start the live stream over again because my webcam. I think it might because my computer, the power went off when I went to eat dinner earlier. So I think that might have something to do with it. Well, again, if you're here, let me know. Hmm. No one's here still. No one is here. Huh. This was awkward before when you stare into the abyss and no one's here. As you can see, though, the lighting is better this time than it was before. You can see my face now. Um, and I'm intending on this live stream lasting a bit, so I'll try to talk for as long as possible. Um, as you can see, it's my 27th birthday today. In case you would like to know, I'm starting to feel kind of old at this point. In truth, I started to feel kind of old in my mid 20s. When I turned 24, that's when I really started thinking about age. Before that, I never really thought about it, but when I hit 24, for some reason, that's when I kind of started contemplating it. Um, it's not that I think that 27 is old. It's just that, but I can see that that old age is coming. That I can kind of see that soon. Okay, again, if you're in the chat, make sure to send me a message if possible, so I know that you're there. So just say anything. So just I know that you're there. Plus, I want to make sure that the chat is working. So if you're in the chat, just type something, anything. Anyway, it's not that I think that 27 is old. I mean, but I can see old age approaching. I can see old age coming, and that's what worries me more than anything. Because sooner or later I'll be 30, and 3 years actually isn't that far away. Um, it really isn't. Um, oh, Castor, I'm glad you're here. Finally, someone showed up in the chat. I'm very pleased that you are here. I didn't know if anyone would show up to this because, believe it or not, I did one of these live streams last Sunday, and no one showed up. Of course, it was kind of in the moment. I wasn't really planning this, but I'm glad to see that you are here. I really appreciate the fact that you are participating in this. Um, because because Castro, I really do think that you do seem to be someone who is somewhat of a friend to me online. So I really do appreciate that. So I just wanted to tell you face to face instead of writing it out like I normally do. So I'm very pleased that you are here. Well, to anyone who might be joining me, I would just like to everyone to know that you can ask me any kind of question. Any kind of writing questions or just questions in general. I mean, I would prefer them to be writing related, but you can ask me anything. You can ask me about classic movies or anything really. Um, so so just ask me anything really. I need some kind of question so I can continue the conversation. But but like I was saying, um, It's not that I think 27 is old, but I can see old age coming because it does seem that eventually I will be 30 years old, and it's not that I think that 30 is old necessarily. It's just that but I can see old age coming. And it's not that I need to necessarily have anything accomplished by a certain age either. It's it's more that I wish I could see a light at the end of the tunnel, that I could see how I'm going to get to a certain place, that I can see how, for example, that my writing career might progress or how I might progress in certain areas, but I really don't see the light. And I think that is my main problem, that I just can't see the light. And even though a light right now is shining in my face, uh, so um, so that's what bothers me more than anything else is uh, is the fact that I don't really see any hope or any way of how I could get to a certain place. And that's what bothers me really more than anything is that because for example, when people hit 30, people in general kind of stop having sympathy. That they, if you're 27, they'll say, "Oh, you're still so young," but once you hit 30, uh, people stop saying that. There's some kind of psychological, cultural reason for why that is. Um, so it's not that I feel old now. It's just that time passes so quickly. I mean, a lot of people, they'll see someone in their 80s or 90s, and they'll think, "Oh, that person's so old. I'll never be that age." Well, you'll be that age before you know it. I mean, you truly will. Um, so um, it looks like Castor was here, but now he's not here. It doesn't seem to me. Castor, if you're still here, just say something else so I know that you're still here. Um, if you're still here, just say something. Um, but I think he left possibly. But anyway, I think that is the main trouble with age. It's not that you necessarily feel old, but you just feel like, not necessarily that you should have accomplished something by this time, but that you should be able to at least see how you might be able to accomplish something, how something might be possible, and that's what I don't really see. Um, Again, I was going to now that I've talked about age, I was going to do this on. I was going to do this live stream on TikTok, but I still don't have this. Oh, Caster, so you're still here. Well, just um, just since you're the only one here, just ask me something to keep the conversation, the flow going, or whatever. While I'm here, though, I will talk about my books. Um, as you can see, uh, this is um, this is my book, Mournful Wanderer, which is my most recent book. It is kind of a gothic story. It basically combines elements of Edgar Allan Poe and Henry James. It combines a lot of different elements. Um, and I try to be very vivid and visceral in my descriptions. And I'll read to you the opening paragraph, which I think is a good opening paragraph. Even in mourning, Alice Bloomington remained tranquil, almost as though she somehow suspected that her son hadn't truly perished from the world. Most astonishingly, her gaze stayed linear, focused, and without tension. Laden with regret, Alice was perfectly motionless, never even once swaying her legs. The tender sentiments of grief, although quite potent, only loosely entered her heart. They violently attacked her resilient nature, occasionally even penetrating it. Um, but she always managed to repel them, albeit only momentarily. She grasped her diary in her hands, gently stroking its soft edges. Leisurely tilting her head, Alice's eyes drifted towards her pale fingertips. Her moist palms firmly attached themselves to the withered pages, the pressure steadily increasing. Caught between states of vitality and fragility, her lips quivered as she turned the pages, directly above which emerged the soft creases within her jawline. Now, I really like that that piece of description because it really does describe the visceral nature of the character. I think that if you describe certain body parts like the little creases in someone's face and how their eyes move or the sentiments in their eyes or the little gesticulations and gestures, that really does ultimately provide a very vivid picture in the reader's mind. I don't think it's enough just to describe the overall emotional state. Um, you can combine descriptions of the emotional state with descriptions of bodily gestures, and ultimately that is what creates a vivid picture. Is Mournful Wanderer your favorite? It is in some ways, and it isn't in other ways. I think that right style wise, that Mournful Wanderer I think is definitely the most ornate book that I have written to date. It's definitely the most complex book in terms of prose. Of the books that I have published, I think some of the books that I'm working on now are even more complicated than Mournful Wanderer. But of the books that I've published, Mournful Wanderer is definitely the most complex. I would say that Empty Sounds of the Wind is probably the story that I like the most because I think the story is just very dramatic and emotional. And this is my book, Empty Sounds of the Wind, mainly because I really love the characterization in Empty Sounds of the Wind. I think that there's a lot of emotional tension and drama within Empty Sounds of the Wind that works really well. I'll read to you the description of Empty Sounds of the Wind, though. After fighting in the Second World War, Edmund O'Neill returns home, desperate to reconcile with his father, a man of 80 who has become an invalid. In the process, he will discover a dreadful secret, one that will tear his sanity apart. There's just a lot of suspense and emotional tension within Empty Sounds of the Wind because it's basically about a son trying to reconcile with his father, and which I find to just and his father has a I imply at least has dementia. I don't clearly state that, but I try to imply it in the story, which of course I had a my grandfather had dementia, so I kind of borrowed my experience with that and put it within the characters. So I find the story of Mournful Wanderer a very I mean of Empty Sounds of the Wind a very emotional for that reason. But I would say that Mournful Wanderer is probably my favorite so far in terms of the prose. But I enjoy the story more of Empty Sounds of the Wind, and I think that I'll read to you some of the opening passages of Empty Sounds of the Wind to pass the time as well. Edmund stood upon the edge of the cliff, not even half the man that he had been before. The pain circulated into his feet, through his hands, eventually reaching his face, where it finally subsided. Though he attempted to suppress it, a slight moan managed to escape his lips, causing him even more pain. He stared into the water below, conscious of nothing but his own despair. Within the dark depths of the water, he saw the faces of his fellow soldiers, all of whom had perished during combat. Their eyes were blank, expressionless, and without concern. They tried to speak, but their mouths released only air. Desperate to escape the painful memories, Edmund closed his eyes, a strategy that proved to be more harmful than helpful. Almost completely out of nowhere, he heard the sounds of gunshots, followed swiftly by the echoes of bombs, the cries of injured men, and the soft disappointment of surrender. The more he tried to rid himself of the painful memories, the more potent they became, and the more potent they became, the more he wished for death. Edmund stepped forward, slightly hesitant, though only to a very limited degree. Regardless of how hard he tried, the pain would not cease. His heart, once so full of passion, had been reduced to an empty abyss, inside of which existed nothing but desolation. Edmund continued to stand upon the ledge, already half out of breath with only himself for company. After several seconds of deliberation, some of which were spent thinking of the past, he finally opened his eyes. To his great surprise, the faces had vanished, along with the terrible reverberations of war. The water, it appeared, had returned to a state of tranquillity. The water, despite its violent nature, appeared to soothe his mind. The waves swayed back and forth from left to right, seemingly in a rhythmic order until finally coming to a complete halt. Edmund was, at least for the time being, free to return to a life of mediocrity. He was in a great amount of pain, both inside and out. The pain proved to be so great, in fact, that he could barely keep his body from collapsing. Little by little, his spirit appeared to be crumbling. His hands, both of which were bandaged and stiff, brought him more agony than any other part of his body. Formerly so full of energy, they appeared to be dead, motionless, and without purpose. The pain moved up his hands, through his arms, before finally reaching his face, where it finally dispersed. Edmund let out a soft moan, the agony almost unbearable. He wanted to scream, to finally release his frustration, but his pride prevented him from doing so. The sky looked down upon Edmund, pitiless in every expression that it made. Within a matter of seconds, the air became very thick, its stability almost completely dependent upon the atmosphere. The sun disappeared behind the clouds. The wind ceased operating, and the sky turned almost completely black. Everything around him, from the grass to the ocean to the very light itself, ceased moving. His mind continued to lose perspective on the moment. The pain, he came to realize, had damaged all of his senses, including his ability to properly see, feel, and understand the world. Edmund was, to his utter realization, trapped within the bandages. They covered every inch of his face, with the exception of his eyes and mouth. 3 years prior, his face had been youthful, smooth, and radiant. The philosophy of violence, combined with the theology of death, had made his face unrecognizable. Not only had they damaged his face, but they had also damaged his soul, albeit only partially. Deep within his heart, there was a part of him that wanted to start a new life, preferably a new one, where there would be no more violence. After several moments, most of which were spent in complete agony, his senses started to return to him. They returned slowly, peacefully, with an almost solemn tenderness, the likes of which he had never experienced before. For a brief, fleeting moment, he was in pure ecstasy. His senses were becoming much clearer. Slowly but surely, they became sharper, stronger, and more intense. Edmund extended his hand, suddenly at one with the forces of nature. His senses became so strong, both internally and externally, that they almost overwhelmed him. Well, those are just some passages from Empty Sounds of the Wind. Yes, that's right, Casper. So he says, "I see. So you basically prefer the story you wrote for Empty Sounds of the Wind, but when it comes to style, you prefer Mournful Wanderer." That's right. Um, I prefer, because I do think that with every story that I write, my style is becoming more elaborate. But I would say that I'm more emotionally connected to the story of Empty Sounds of the Wind. That's how I would put it. Which again, Empty Sounds of the Wind would actually fall more into the realm of noir in some ways, although you could call it a melodrama as well. Oh, by the way, Castor, if you're wanting to ask me any kind of movie questions or noir questions, you can do that as well. You don't just have to ask me stuff about my books, so feel free to do that if you would like. Um, but anyway. No, Mournful Wanderer is more of a of a of a gothic tale, inspired by the likes of Edgar Allan Poe, Henry James, and it's really the main point. It's more about atmosphere than actual plot. Whereas Empty Sounds of the Wind is more Empty Sounds of the Wind is more plot oriented. But Mournful Wanderer is about, well, I'll just read to you the synopsis first. Set during the Civil War, Mournful Wanderer explores the emotional trials of Alice Bloomington, a grieving widow and mother who attempts to contact the spirit of her dead son. In attempting to do so, she will seek out the assistance of her family doctor, a man with questionable motivations. So basically, Mournful Wanderer is about the main character's name, Alice, and how she is a Southern belle, and she lost her son during the Civil War while her husband was fighting. Her son was only an infant at the time, and he was only about. I imply that he's only about a year or two old. But when her son dies, she starts to grieve for him because she's lost her son. She doesn't know if her husband is dead or alive. But then she starts being haunted by the spirit of her son, or at least so she thinks. But she doesn't know whether the spirit is actually haunting her, or whether it's an hallucination or a trick. So, or a facade or a mirage. She seeks out the help of her family physician, who claims that he can contact the dead, that he has psychic powers, and which she thinks is very strange. And so ultimately, the physician ends up trying to aid her in contacting the spirit of her dead son. But she doesn't know whether he's trying to trick her in order to somehow get a hold of her money, or get her to trust him, or something, or whether he's being genuine. And ultimately, I leave it up to the reader on whether or not that she's actually being haunted. It could be in her mind. Yeah, you don't know, or the ghost could be real. I tend to like stories that have an ambiguity in them, and that's why I love Mournful Wanderers so much, because Mournful Wanderer has that sense of ambiguity that for example, was in The Turn of the Screw, had that sense of ambiguity. So that's what I tried to do with this. I also it's also this was also in The Shining inspired me somewhat when writing this as well, because in that you're not really sure whether the ghosts are real or not. So I've also been inspired by cinema as well, especially Stanley Kubrick and the likes. So so basically, Mournful Wanderer is an exploration of atmosphere. It's all about atmosphere and mystery, and the complexity of visual and ornate language. And it's an exercise in in visceral atmosphere, is what I would call it, where the story kind of sucks you in, where there's actually very little dialogue in Mournful Wanderer, for a very specific reason. um, Mainly because I wanted it to almost play like a silent movie. That was my main mission with Mournful Wanderer, was to get it to where um, the main way of viewing the story would be through looking at the facial expressions of the characters, the gestures of the characters. And that's why very often in the story you'll see how sometimes the characters will make exaggerated facial expressions, because that's ultimately what I wanted to achieve, was just a sense of foreboding, not terror, but suspense, of foreboding and anxiety, of trepidation. That's the word I'm looking for, of a sense of foreboding trepidation. That was my ultimate goal with Mournful Wanderer. And however, the um, the story the story that actually has sold the most copies is Symphony of Perdition. This book, I don't know why, but it has sold around a dozen copies ever since I joined TikTok. Mournful Wanderer, I'll just be honest, has only sold one copy, but this has sold near a dozen copies. Now, Symphony of Perdition I would call is what I would call a melodramatic tragedy. It's almost done in a Tennessee Williams kind of style. So I'll read the synopsis of Symphony of Perdition, which is my best-selling book technically. I don't know why, but told through a series of flashbacks, Symphony of Perdition explores the emotional journey of Sam, a poor and down-to-earth farmer who attempts to save his wife from her depression. Along the way, he of his daughter. Apparently, my connection is unstable. Um, Maybe it's back now. But again, I'm reading from Symphony of Perdition, and my dogs are barking outside. What are they barking at? I don't know. This always happens during live stream. Someone starts making some kind of noise or something. But I have two basset hounds, in case you're wondering. But Symphony of Perdition is basically, I try to tell Symphony of Perdition through a series of flashbacks. And so I really try to experiment with time in Symphony of Perdition, and how ultimately Symphony of Perdition deals with a lot of philosophical big questions about the meaning of life and everything, about the fact that Sam's wife is mentally ill, and she might commit suicide, and there's really, and he's wondering, is this inevitable? if depression runs in your family, does that mean that you will share the same fate as your ancestry? Yes, the lack of dialogue definitely does exemplify that. That's a good observation. I think the lack of dialogue somehow conveys the sensation of solitude the characters experience. That is exactly right, and I think that really works in in literary drama. However, that's not what I'm doing with my current book, Silent Reckoning. I think that in Silent Reckoning, which I can show you here, I can. Uh, the This is the rough draft of my book, Silent Reckoning. As you can see here, the one I've been typing on my typewriter, and there's quite a lot of dialogue in Silent Reckoning. Not at the beginning of the story, but by the middle, there's definitely a lot of dialogue because Silent Reckoning, the book that I'm currently working on, it's kind of a combination of All About Eve, Chinatown, and The Great Gatsby. So I think my dialogue has really improved in Silent Reckoning because I've been trying to make the dialogue um, very witty and in the style of kind of in the style of Joseph Makowitz, who wrote All About Eve, and with a little bit of Shakespeare thrown in there as well. And so Silent Reckoning is a different beast altogether because Silent Reckoning is trying to combine the I guess you could say the articulate sensibilities of the 1920s. So Silent Reckoning is a very different book in that way. It also has atmosphere as well, but it's of a different kind. It's more of a Art Deco kind of atmosphere, a very glossy, gaudy kind of atmosphere. It's much similar to noir in some ways, although it's pre-noir is how I would describe it. Um, but back to Symphony of Perdition. So basically, Sam is trying to save uh, trying to save his wife from her depression, but ultimately he thinks that her fate might be inevitable. And the villain in Symphony of Perdition uh, is her father, which his wife's name is Susan, who is a psychiatrist, and he is a materialist. Her father is a psychiatrist and a materialist, and he thinks that ultimately that genes that your genes determine your fate, and therefore that his daughter's fate is inevitable and that she will go insane just like her mother. Therefore he sets out to eliminate her, and that's as far as I will go. But I thought I might read to you the opening passages from Symphony of Perdition. Sam stared at his wife's grave, clueless as to what to do with his life. For the entire evening he had been pacing between multiple tombstones, the expression on his face too grim to describe accurately. The air was cold, thick, and almost entirely devoid of spirituality. The frosty atmosphere, combined with the cumbersome darkness, brought a great amount of agony to his body. His left hand, once considered to be capable and sturdy, vibrated with a great amount of intensity. Slowly, gently, and calmly, Sam's muscles forced his hand to edge towards the grave. The more Sam's hand drifted towards the stone, the more his line of focus seemed to linger behind it, ever so gently journeying towards the frigid structure, an all too familiar place of despair in which only painful recollections resided. The physical texture of the grave brought back many memories, quite a few of them unpleasant. Sam's grief overwhelmed all other thoughts within his mind. He attempted he attempted to release his hand from the grave, but to his astonishment, it remained trapped within the frozen landscape. Like everything else that surrounded it, his hand was motionless, dead, and lost to time. Sam had, at least temporarily, become another relic within the graveyard. No longer fully alive, Sam entered another realm of reality where he slowly drifted between fantasy and nihilism, the latter of which cut deeply, sharply, and directly into his soul. Out of the darkness, an indecipherable image, one filled with a great amount of mystery, started to emerge from the tombstone. At first, the image appeared to be a formless shadow, but after several seconds of silence, the shadow started to change its appearance, eventually transforming into a face. Sam gasped, completely shaken by the unnatural apparition that presented itself to him. The eyes, not to mention the nose, ears, and mouth, appeared to be very familiar to him. The face stared at him, not bothering to say a word. Very discreetly, and without any effort at all, the face developed a delicate smile. Far from being hostile, the smile evoked a sense of warmth, one of several feelings that had abandoned the landscape. Sam stood perfectly still, breathless and calm, with only a handful of emotions to guide him. For the first time in many years, Sam felt a sense of tranquility, an emotion that had been missing from his agonizing existence. Without proper warning, the face started to glide forward, stopping just several inches from Sam's lips. The face opened its mouth, almost as if to speak, but it was soon silenced by the powerful sounds of the wind. From left to right, the wind ravaged the landscape, mostly to the detriment of the tombstones, some of which succumbed to the forces that oppressed them. Sam grabbed his throat, shivering while doing so. Previously obscure and unfocused, the features of the face, and in particular the eyes, started to evoke a sense of radiance. The high, robust cheekbones, as well as the blood red lips, which had previously been undetectable, triggered a sense of lust within Sam, someone who had rarely, if ever, been privy to such an intoxicating display of allure. The face moved towards the center of Sam's lips, stopping only briefly before finally embracing him. Sam closed his eyes, pleasantly surprised by the kiss that had been bestowed upon him. The concept of reality, of facing the truth, did not matter to him. In his world of fantasy, everything appeared to be possible, not excluding the resurrection of the dead. Slowly but surely, the cold air, along with the strong wind, started to disappear, only to be gradually replaced by heat. At first, the heat soothed Sam's skin, but with the passing of every second, including seconds that had been completely lost to time, the air became progressively adhesive. Over the course of several moments, and without any effort to speak of, the heat took on a life of its own. The sweat erupted from Sam's skin, tearing, clawing, and ripping its way through his soft, freckly flesh. A violent moan vibrated its way out of his throat, the agony steadily increasing. The sweat the sweat drizzled down his neck, at first rather tranquilly, before finally increasing in speed. After several more moments of despair, Sam's eyes lifted themselves open, sweat erupting from their swift and uneven movements. The perpetual darkness, previously considered to be the perpetual darkness, previously considered to be an eternal force, had perished from the environment, seemingly for all time. In its place entered a soft and swaying light, comparable to that of sunlight. The sunlight, though seemingly hostile, provided a great amount of serenity. The sounds of birds, of pristine wildlife, engulfed the landscape. Preceding several moments of disorientation, Sam's vision started to become progressively clear, at first slowly, then more swiftly, until finally reaching a state of complete, utter, and total clarity. Well, that's what I've been. I just thought I would read to you some passages from Symphony of Perdition. The Great Gatsby is a terrific book. I love the movies they made out the movies they made out of it with Robert Redford and Leonardo DiCaprio. Yeah, I've the Great Gatsby is a really great book. It might just be my favorite book, in fact, Castor. I'm kind of going between that and the book. Oh, this book over here, which Great Expectations, the Charles Dickens novel, which is not like any of the books that I'm writing right now, but I truly did love this book. Um, which I didn't know anything about it at the time, so I went in fresh reading the book, and I really enjoyed the plot and the story and the writing. Let me see, The Great Gatsby is a terrific book. Yeah, I've seen the Leonardo DiCaprio version of The Great Gatsby. I haven't seen the Robert Redford version. I've been planning to, but um, from the Leonardo DiCaprio version is faithful to the book for the most part. But The Great Gatsby, though, is a very stylish book, a very well written book. I especially love the last paragraph. And I'm trying when I'm the book I'm writing now, I'm really going to try to capture the strength of that writing when I get to the last paragraph, because I think the last paragraph of The Great Gatsby, which I should have brought a copy in here, I didn't, but um, the last paragraph of The Great Gatsby, it really does capture the strength of F. Scott Fitzgerald's writing, and that's why I because it talks about time and riding on the waves of time and going into the past, ceaselessly into the past. Um, and that's why I really love The Great Gatsby for that reason. It's one of the I think it might just be the greatest American novel. Um, yeah, Great Expectations. I haven't actually seen a movie version of this yet. Um, again, I went into this cold, so I didn't know anything about it, which actually helped me because very often when I read a classic book, I've normally uh, I've normally seen seen a film version or something. Therefore, I know kind of what's going to happen in the book. But with this version, I didn't know anything, so which was very helpful. And because I could really get into the story because I didn't really have any expectations, no pun intended, about how it was going to end. So I really loved it. In fact, I just ordered though a film version of Great Expectations from the 1940s, but it's kind of a little late getting to my house. I ordered it over a week ago, but it seems to be lost in the mail. I don't know where it is. But let's see. There's also a noirish. Yeah, the noirish version of the Great with Alan Ladd. Yeah, I haven't seen that one either. I've only seen the Leonardo DiCaprio one. But again, when I read classic novels, I often like to go in blind where I haven't seen a lot of film adaptations again because then I can enjoy the story more because I'm not expecting anything. Um, and so and no, The Great Gatsby is one of the finest books ever written, and that's what really inspired me to write Silent Reckoning, and which I'll show you. The This is the draft of Silent Reckoning so far of the of the uh, of the story that I've been writing on my typewriter. I've been working on it for nearly a year on the 1922 typewriter that I don't know if it belonged to my grandfather or what else, but I've been working on this story for nearly a year, and it's quite arduous work though, especially since I'm trying to get it exactly right. And maybe I'll read to you the first paragraph of this is the rough draft version of Silent Reckoning. Walter Peterson dreamt of Jeannie long before he ever laid eyes upon her. During twilight, often while clenching the sheets that enveloped his quivering body, he visualized her crimson lips, her porcelain complexion. But it was not until he visited the dark movie house, a place often referred to as the Palace, that he truly witnessed the complete extent of her immaculate sensuality. As the curtain parted from the dust-covered screen, pigments of luminous light seized the auditorium, as if eager to display the full power of the moving image. Although the images contained no sound, their visual splendor more than compensated. A glistening pasture materialized on the screen, its wavering hills evoking sentiments of elemental serenity. Following several intervals of blissful stagnation, the figure of a woman manifested on the screen, her features obscured by the vibrancy of the projector. As the light succumbed to the sweltering darkness, the refined characteristics that encompassed her visage became perceptible. As with a pair of gleaming pearls, her eyes drew the fixations of all countenances in the audience, enrapturing them with proficient ingenuity. The audience lost the capacity for introspection. Sooner than previously anticipated, their prejudices and preconceptions melted away, vanishing like clouds of vapor. She was the only thing that mattered. Like a pack of ravenous wolves, they leered towards the screen, their expressions covetous in nature. Shadings of darkness formed around her eyes, emphasizing the pale centers of her pupils. Unions of light and shadow circulated around the base of her robust chin, their spectrums highlighting the creases in her lustrous skin. Even though the image lacked vivid colorizations, her auburn hair still shone through. Her lips quivered, subservient to the frigidities of the wind. Her elongated eyes, coupled with her symmetrical cheekbones, embraced the dualities of light and darkness, the latter concealing the blemishes that permeated the corners of her face. Um, that's just those are the opening paragraphs of Silent Reckoning, which technically there's going to be a prologue though that has come before this, but that's going to be the opening at the of the beginning. I just wanted to give you some sampling of Silent Reckoning, which Silent Reckoning takes place in 1920 and ultimately it is going to be about a guy named Walter Peterson who is obsessed with this actress whose career may be coming to an end because of sound films, and so he wants to revive her career by ultimately ruining this reputation of this rival actress, and but ultimately, he ends up making things worse in the end. And some of the story is told through Jeannie Anderson, who is the actress that he's obsessed with. Some of it is told through her point of view, where so some of the story is written in first person. So one of the things I'm doing with Silent Reckoning is that I'm going back and forth between first person and third person, which is a very unique thing that I've never done before. Most stories are either written in third person or first person, but I'm combining both forms of narration for this story, which makes Silent Reckoning in some ways a very ambitious project. And for example, there's if I can find it, because I haven't numbered these pages, so they could roll away in a strong wind. I really need to number them. So if I can find it, let me see if I can find it. Let's see here. Almost there. Almost there. Almost there. I can find it. Let me go back. Need to be able to find it. Oh, it's not too far. Okay, here it is. This will be the prologue for Silent Reckoning, which kind of gives you a good sense of my first person narration style. Even before I was even a whisper in my mother's thoughts, it seemed as if the world had already forgotten me. I was born on August 25th, 1893. The world was completely different then. I still recall the echoes of the horses in the streets, the gallant way in which they trotted along the pavements. The air was clean, almost unnaturally so, and there seemed to be a radiant innocence to almost everything. The clouds in the sky, possibly in response to the purities in our spirits, were enchantingly serene. On and on the days shimmered, never once beholden to the shadows of midnight. All day long I heard soft piano music. The sun seemed to orchestrate the euphoric melodies, intensifying their auspicious cadences. There was no pain, there was no heartbreak, Whatever darkness existed, whatever melancholy drifted through my frivolous gestures, was ultimately drowned out by the hymns of morning. Now, that's how the story will begin ultimately. And I think that paragraph is really strong because it really gives you a sense of curiosity as to the emotional state of the characters. And that first person narration is from a female perspective, which I quite enjoy the fact that it is from a female perspective because believe it or not, I actually enjoy writing female characters more than male characters. Because I just find female characters, generally speaking, are more complex, and because I just find the mystique of the feminine persona to be very alluring and fascinating and enchanting, and that's ultimately why my female characters tend to be more layered than my male characters, and that's why a lot of times when people say, "Oh, male authors they can't write female characters very well," well, in my case, I actually prefer writing female characters. I think my female characters tend to be a lot more complex than my male characters in some ways. Um, well, I've talked a lot about my about books. I think I'll show anyone who might be listening Green. This is the first book that I ever wrote. It's not a very good book. I never published it because it's terrible. I wrote it when I was 16, and it's one of my longer works, but it is. I would be embarrassed to show it to anyone. This book, Mr. Green, which, as you can see, I used a stock photo of it for the book. I used a stock photo, and Mr. Green is because it's basically about a promiscuous nobleman, and he has an alternate personality, Mr. Red. And the story actually isn't that bad, but the writing is amateurish and awful. I mean, I can't. I absolutely detest Mr. Green, but there was the first uh, uh, attempt I made at writing a piece of literature, and I thought also I would bring along some other books that have inspired me. I have the complete works of William Shakespeare, the complete works which I got about a month ago, and and I really aspire to not replicate Shakespeare, but Shakespeare is the top tier writer in terms of language. So he really is an inspiration for me, and I really aspire in some ways to write like Shakespeare because he really is one of my ultimate heroes because his use of language is very profound, and that's why I look up to Shakespeare in many ways, and to Charles Dickens as well. I think all of these classic, all of the classic writers really inspire me, and so Shakespeare is definitely I think I don't know if he's certainly not the greatest writer of prose. Shakespeare isn't because Shakespeare wrote plays, he didn't write prose, but he is certainly one of the greatest poets, one of the greatest playwrights, which I've often thought about writing a play, but there are a lot of logistical reasons for why I haven't written a play. Mainly because if you write a play, you have to deal with other actors and theater companies who not might cooperate with you, and there are a million reasons why I prefer writing alone. In fact, the main reason why I became a prose writer instead of a fiction writer or instead of a playwright or a screen is for that very reason because of the fact that I because of the fact that you would have to work with other people and who could ruin your work, and you would have to answer to other people, and I prefer working alone. That's why I chose to be a prose writer instead of a screenwriter and a playwright. And my dogs have been barking for quite a long time now. I don't know if you can hear that, but I don't know what they're barking at or why. But but you can definitely hear them. I have two basset hounds actually, in case anyone is wondering. They've been barking for quite some time. Um, I love them to death, though. I really do. Um, Let me see. What else do I have here? I actually wanted to read some of the best passages from Great Expectations, which I have no idea where this copy came from specifically. Um, I know it belonged to my grandfather at one point, I think, but and let me see here. Let me see here. Mm-hmm. Let me see. Well, I'm trying to find it. Let's see here. Okay, this is the last last little passage that I really love the end of the book where he says, I took her hand in mine and we went out of the ruined place. As the morning mist had risen long ago when I first left the fort, so the evening mists were rising now, and in all the broad expanse of tranquil light they showed to me, I saw no shadow of another parting from her. Now, I really like that passage because in the book, the main character Pip is trying to win the heart of this woman named Estella, who's very cruel to and cold to him, and at the very end of the book, you're not sure whether they're together or not. But in that passage, it shows that her shadow didn't leave him, so perhaps they did get together, or they didn't get together. You're never quite sure, but I love the ambiguity of that ending, and that really made the book for me overall. That's what solidified my interest in the book. And well, I thought while I'm here, I should talk about my whole philosophy of writing and what I think makes good writing. Ultimately, why I write is because I want to create images in the reader's mind, and I want to use language that is aesthetically pleasing. I want to use language that is poetic and beautiful, that is radiant, that has a resplendent quality to it. Um, that is ultimately why I write. I'm kind of intrigued far more by style than substance and story. Even it's not that story and substance doesn't matter to me, because it does matter a great deal, because I think that it ultimately drives the style. It ultimately carries the style forward. The style rides on its shoulders, so to speak. And but ultimately, why I write is because I am obsessed with getting a certain kind of visceral and vivid style, and and because I want to conceive of writing that is very enriching, that enriches your experience, that is very potent, um, that is very I guess you could say that is gleaming with poetic fervor, with poetic fervency, and that's ultimately what I try to achieve in my writing, is to almost create a cinematic experience in a literary form. Is to make it where you can truly visualize the subtle movements of the characters, and my whole philosophy of writing has been about it's been about communicating uh, uh, complex artistries and vivid artistries, and all of those things have have been really important, have been important to me. And it's about creating, I guess you could say, an almost an almost I guess you could say a portentous sense of reality, a reality that is infused with different kinds of subtextures and subtext, and it really is of writing is to give you a true imaginary experience, a true imaginative experience, a very an experience that someone almost came into the room then, but an experience that is enlightening, that is invigorating, and that you will remember for a lifetime. And of course, that is a tall order, and most of the time I don't achieve it. But that is my ultimate goal. Well, whenever I write, is to is to is to paint a picture within the reader's mind. My philosophy, I like to paint with words, so to speak, and that's my philosophy when it comes to writing, is to be very eloquent and decadent. And of course, there are certain words that I, in case you haven't noticed, that I really love using in writing. For example, I really love using the word radiant. Radiant might just be my favorite word. I don't know why. I just love it. But there are other words too, resplendent or refulgent or gleaming or glittering or glistening. Um, or baroque. That's a word I like using it well as well. There are a lot of different words that I think really give people a vivid sense of what you're describing, because ultimately, in order to describe something well, you have to arouse all of the senses, sense of taste, sense of smell, um, your eyes as well. You have to experiment with light. For example, luminous is a good word for describing a powerful light. Um, and also words like gleaming is another word that I like using a lot, or glistening. All of those words really empower the imagination of the reader, which is my ultimate purpose. And so that's my philosophy of writing overall. My main philosophy again is to capture images and to transfer those images into the reader's mind. And again, that in some ways is far more important than plot to me. Even though plot certainly matters as well, as story structure matters, all of those things matter, but but language is what I care about the most. And again, if you're here listening, just send me just put a message in to let me know that you're here. Um, Ask me questions of any kind. You can ask me writing questions. You can ask me all sorts of questions. Um, so, uh, but that's my main philosophy when it comes to writing. I've been talking for nearly an hour now, and and still I've uh, Caster's interacted with me, but no one else has joined the chat. Uh, and I'm for your participation in this. I truly am. And but Because if you ask me questions, then I can go into specifics about the the subject that you're asking me. So I've been trying to talk as much as possible in order. Whenever you're doing a live stream, the ultimate fear is that there's going to be some kind of awkward silence because you'll run out of things to say. Things to say. Um, but um, but as I said before, these are the books that I have for sale. Um, um, there's The Range of Goblin Valley, which I don't talk about as much, and then there's Mournful Wanderer and Symphony of Perdition, and then there's Empty Sounds of the Wind as well, and so those are the books that I have for sale, and perhaps I'll put a link to this when I'm done with this video. There's not a link yet, but there's links to my books on plenty of my videos, though. So just click on any one of my videos, and you're bound to find some kind of link of some kind. And speaking of words, though, I've been talking about words. Another word that I came up with is beauteous. That just there's beautiful, but also you can describe things as beauteous as well. And that and there are just so many different. Well, one way that I come up with new words, though, is that I will occasionally, if I'm reading something and there's a word that I'm not familiar with, I'll write it down. Let's say in notes or whatever, and or if I hear a word that I'm not familiar with, that I will write that word down. And then if I'm writing and I can't come up with anything to say, I will then sometimes go to my notes and I will find a new word that I can use. That's one way of coming up with new words, is that if you just keep a little notebook, either a digital one or a real one, you will often find little notes scrambled in there, and you can use that in your writing. Um, um, and so, and another thing I like doing is that you don't always have to describe beautiful things. Sometimes you can describe things that are you can create a somber atmosphere, a solemn atmosphere, a melancholy atmosphere, um, which a dreary atmosphere, an opaque atmosphere, and uh, an an ornately melancholy atmosphere. And so there are some atmospheres that are of course pleasant, and there are other atmospheres that are going to be rather serene. And so overall, that's my philosophy of writing. And any questions from the audience? Even though there only seems to be one person here right now, but I'm open to questions. So if you have a question, just let me know right now. Any questions? Any questions at all? Well, apparently there aren't any questions. Having a notebook available to write down new ideas is a good strategy. Yes, it is. That is a good strategy. Um, I actually got a notebook recently for my birthday that I'm planning on writing some things in. Which my birthday is today, by the way, but it was celebrated yesterday. That's one reason why I have time to do this now, because it was celebrated yesterday. My father and I actually share the same birthday, and my mother was born on the 21st. So all of our birthdays are celebrated at the same time. So when I have a birthday party, it feels more like I'm going to some kind of committee meeting than a birthday. And let me see here. There is and also I was going to talk about how you can describe colors. For example, if you're trying to describe red, you can talk about. For example, you could say that the delicate flower had a had a rubescent fervor, um, which basically means that the color is a. Yeah. Oh, you prefer a physical one, not electric. I do too. Actually, I prefer because that lasts so much longer. And oh, I forgot that I was going to show some of you the. Did I? Oh, it's been right here all along. This is my handwritten story. It's the story that I've been writing by hand. Which this story is called "Child of Midnight." Um, and I've been giving priority though to Silent Reckoning. Child of Midnight. To be perfectly honest, I really have kind of been winging it on that story. I don't know which direction it's going. It's another one of those stories that's it's more about atmosphere than the actual story, and that's why I've only been working on it a little each day. My writing schedule, in case anyone wants to know, is I basically will start out the day. Um, I wake up at around 10 a.m. I used to wake up at around 2 p.m., but I found that I can't really spend time with my family that way. So I wake up at 10 a.m. and then I will have breakfast and everything, and then usually at around 11:30 I will start I will start writing, and I will work on this handwritten story from 11:30 until 12:30, and then I will read for 1 hour between 12:30 and 1:30, and then at 1:30 I will go to my typewriter and I will then work on this story from 1:30 until 4:30, three solid hours, um, which that is definitely the most arduous part of my day. And then I will then have dinner with my family. At 5, I will try to exercise, and then at 6, I will at 6 o'clock. I will then watch a movie. I try to watch at least one movie every day, and I'll do that from 6 until 8. At 8 o'clock I will then edit my work, which that takes up around 2 hours, and then at 10 I will usually catch up on some kind of TV show that I'm watching, and then I will have have dinner, which is usually for me just a bowl of cereal, and then from 11 p.m. until about 1:30 a.m. is what I call my free time, which I think it's always important to schedule a free time during the day. Then at 1:30 a.m. I will get ready for bed, and then at 2 a.m. I will go to bed, and that's what I do around 6 days a week. On Sundays, what kind? What kind of exercise? I'll answer that in a minute. But on Sundays I will I take off Sundays and I just do whatever. It's because I do think it's important to take at least one day a week off. And on Sundays I just try to edit videos, or I try not to write on Sundays, and that's why I've dedicated my day doing to this doing this. What kind of exercise? I have a treadmill in my room, a manual treadmill that I will run on for around an hour. It's actually very noisy, which is why I can't do it too late at night. Um, I've been meaning to get back into weightlifting because I have a weight in my room, a pretty heavy weight that I used to exercise with. I haven't done that in a while though, but but I mainly try to run on the treadmill for around 45 minutes to an hour, and which is actually my bedroom. Which this is not my bedroom. I'm in the sunroom out here, and which there's no air conditioning in here. Let's see what temperature is in here. It's 53 degrees in here. There's a heater in there, but I have to do it out here because my bedroom is frankly a mess. Because I'm trying to use it as it was spacious in the beginning, but I'm trying to use it as an office room, an exercise room, a DVD collection room, a library, uh, and a bedroom and a theater room because I have a projector in there where I watch movies. So it is highly crowded in my bedroom because I really don't have there aren't really any other rooms where I can move some of that stuff. That's why I'm having to do the live stream out here because my bedroom is a mess, and plus it would be noisy in my house. So I'm out here in this sunroom. Um, but that's the kind of exercise I used to do push-ups as well, which I've gotten out of the habit of doing. Um, there used to actually be an exercise machine at my house that in the basement where I used to strengthen my chest muscles, but that it malfunctioned, and ultimately it was too big. It, I mean, at the house that I used to live in, and ultimately it malfunctioned. We had to leave it there because it was too big to carry to take with us. So I don't really have an exercise machine anymore. Um, but I would like to get back into lifting weights sometime. But mainly I've just been running, and but that's ultimately what my schedule looks like. Except on Sundays. On Sundays I try to rest. I try to recuperate, and then probably at this point, Silent Reckoning will. I'll probably have a rough draft sometime either in March or April, and after that, it will require about 2 or 3 months of editing, and it will probably be ready for release either in June or July. That's assuming that I keep going at the current rate. It might be later, it might be sooner. It just depends. But I may will come out this year. But whether it comes out in the middle of the year or at the end of the year, it just depends on a lot of different factors. And so well, ultimately, I've talked for a long time now, and it doesn't seem like anyone else is going to show up. So, if that's the case, I guess I'll end this birthday live stream, um, and people might be able to watch it afterwards. So, but before I go, I'll just any questions you want to ask me, feel free. So, Castor, if you have any last minute questions, just ask away. I'll wait a few more minutes longer before I exit out. Okay, no questions, but a suggestion. Well, what do you suggest? So, what would you suggest? Oh, give some Russian literature a try, like Anna Karenina, um, um, yeah, yeah, and Crime and Punishment and all of that. It's kind of funny is that I actually when it comes to this might sound kind of prejudiced of me. I'm not, but I'm just saying is that one of the reasons why I've been kind of reluctant to read books that have been translated is because I want to get a sense of the author's language and how they use language is very important to me. And sometimes I don't think you get that as much if you're reading a book that has been translated, um, which is um, which is why I kind of haven't read as many translated books. But I'm definitely planning to read some Russian literature. It's just that there's so much literature out there that 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 you barely scratch the surface because, for example, what books did I read this year? Let's see. I wrote. I wrote. I mean, not I wrote. I read Great Expectations. I read The Great Gatsby. I read uh, Jane Eyre. I read The Christmas Carol. I read The Invisible Man. I read The Scarlet Letter. Um, I read Mere Christianity. That was a nonfiction book. Um, what else did I read this year? I read about 8 books last year. I can't. I mean last year. I'm talking about last year. Uh, I read the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Um, um, I read quite a few books last year, but I can't remember all of them right now. But but no, I'm definitely going to give Russian literature a chance sometime. It just depends on when. I'm planning sometime to read another Charles Dickens book, The Tale of Two Cities, which I haven't read yet. Um, but Great Expectations um, was definitely a great book. Um, well, let me see here. Do I want to end the live stream now, or do I want to continue it? Because it does seem like anyone is going to, you know, one of the reasons I was afraid to do a live stream is because I didn't think anyone would show up. Um, and apparently, I mean, other than you, Caster, no one has shown up. So, which I'm glad you're here though. It's definitely generous of you. But I don't just want to end it though on that note. Let me see here. Oh, what happened to that? Hmm. Hmm. I think I might end by reading this one of the final passages from the Mournful Wanderer, which is, I think, a really strong passage that exemplifies some of my writing. Uh, by getting rid of the diary, Alice hoped to relieve herself of such fears. But deep within her heart, behind all of the false assurances of innocence, she knew that such fears would continue to haunt her for the rest of her life, possibly even after. The pages of her diary and all of the secrets within them succumbed to the scorching flames, with the words fading into blackness, into the darkness that never ceases to consume all things, whether living or not. Um, that is ultimately, a very climactic passage. It really demonstrates what I would call the decay of time, the slow tribulations of time, the uh, the I guess you could say the obsequious nihilism that time ultimately is, and that ultimately and that ultimately time decays over time. Even this pod not podcast, even this live stream in some ways can be seen as a metaphor for the passage and the decay and the weariness and the erosion of time. And and in that sense, I think that passage is a good representation of life itself, and that's the very last passage of the book. And I've been very reluctant, though, to read that passage because it gives away some spoilers. But you don't really, without reading the rest of the book, you don't really get a context for it. Um, so I think I'll end the live stream now. Thanks, thank you, Caster, for participating in this, and I would like to thank anyone else who may have been watching. So I might do another one of these in the future. So thank you, and I'll see you next time.